Welcome back to Echo Ridge. Today, we have a lot to catch up on after that whole nasty zombie apocalypse thing, but it's gonna be fine. One of the problems we're starting to run into, and we talked about this a little in the last episode, was the fact that it's getting a little warm on this side of the base, and as such, the plum squashes are starting to hit that body temperature growth halted state. Now, in the long term, it's not too big of a deal because the ethanol comes out at minus 20 degrees. But since it got so warm in here, well, the ethanol is sort of dumping all of its chill in the surrounding area before it gets to the plum squashes. Ironically enough, though, the industrial area is doing just fine when it comes to chill, so I think it is probably about time to extend this cooling loop. And I think we have a lot more thermal capacity to deal with. We're heading into the big bucket at 40 degrees, it comes out of the big bucket at 35, which means we're still trying to equalize the temperature in the bucket. Not too big of a deal there, but then all said and done, it comes back in at around 30 degrees. And notice, this is all just with standard liquid pipes. We're not using too many radiants, mainly because we just didn't have a lot of refined metal. We have fixed that situation a little bit, we have some copper now, so why don't we spread out this a little bit more? I noticed it was still hot over in this area, so let's throw a couple of radiants here, and then look to see where we're extending this loop. I'm thinking right through here is going to be just fine, because the most important parts are the temperatures required for the trees, for the pike apple bushes to keep feeding the phloxes, and then of course to the mammoth area here. So I'm thinking coming across, going up a couple of times, and then back down to go into the metal refinery. Let's see what I can come up with. All right, it's a little hard to see, but I think you'll get the general taste of it. We're going across here, over, up, more up, and then coming back down to eventually rejoin the loop right here. I have a lot of bridges to put in and also some natural tiles that I'm going to have to repair because we're bulldozing right through them, but that shouldn't be too bad. And then once we get the primary pipes in, we can sprinkle in some of the radiant liquid pipes. First blueprint of the day is a little give and take. I'm not really interested in any of these dupes, but I sure do love a citrus spandex suit. But I'm not quite sure if anybody can actually wear the citrus spandex suit. It would have to be a Frosty dupe because everybody else has to be in a warm coat. And unfortunately, the only way to really find that out is by clicking on somebody, going to their bio, scrolling all the way down to their equipment, only because I've already sorted this a couple of times, and then just keep clicking and see who's not wearing a warm coat. Freya here is wearing a purple polyester suit. Here we go, Synth. Synth is wearing a snazzy suit, which means they are frostproof. I suppose I could also have clicked on the suit itself to see who's still in a snazzy suit, because this will show what everybody is wearing. You'd still have to go to the dupe itself to ensure that they did in fact have the frostproof. There you go, buddy. Looking good. They've already gotten a lot of these pipes finished, which is good. So I've been a little bit worried about the duplicate labor. We are very behind on all sorts of stuff due to the no fault of my own zombie thing. Yeah, I'm absolutely not taking any responsibility for that. And I've let the Dupe Workers Union know just that. I'm also taking the opportunity to go around with some granite tiles to replace some of these snow tiles. We're still having a bit of a snow shortage. It's not too big of a deal because we've been bringing it down by the onesies and twosies. But from the looks of it, I don't think we're going to be able to maintain this many bonbon trees due to the snow. Because once again, apparently when it comes down in the meteor form, the tiles are only 20 kilos, which means you're only going to get 10 kilos per tile. And if it weren't for the wonderful tallow that the spigot seals were dropping, I wouldn't worry about bonbon trees at all. Because, well, I've got plenty of nectar and not much more to do with it. I suppose continuous plastic production's a good thing. We're already sitting at over a ton. Of course, then there's the other issues. I'm actually going to need 12 tons of plastic here for a future project. Some of you can probably already guess what that is and why. Oy, what am I going to do about that? So I suppose I have to choose between the spigot seals or the nectar. Or just go find a lot more snow until I have a lot of both. Well, here's some snow right here. Right now, these conveyor loaders are set on sweep only. Why don't we go ahead and accelerate this just a little bit by throwing down a storage bin and have it loaded up with 20 tons worth of snow. And that way I can then sweep it all at once, and I'll put this on a priority of, let's say 6 for now. See how quickly we're able to source 20 tons from up here in the Great North. Another one of the little projects we're doing down here is I need to put in the conveyor loader and rail system to get all these goodies out, because I need to close this up pretty permanently. It's working just great, except because I put in the one liquid lock, well, it's a little warm out here, because all this steam temperature is coming out through this mercury, which we knew was going to happen, but we never intended for this to be open for very long. And because this area gets so hot, it's going to require some steel. Now, where am I going to put both of these things? First, let's look at the auto sweeper. Maybe I put the auto sweeper up one, but then I'd have to move the thermal aqua tuner. No. That's not going to work out for me. I suppose there's a chance that it's only going to come down right here and that this is just errant, probably from these ladders. So I will sweep this like normal. I could also get rid of the broken fire extinguisher, but it's so cute. So we'll put a steel auto sweeper right here, a steel conveyor loader. No, I need to flip these. That way the rail run is shorter. So we'll put the conveyor loader, say here, and the auto sweeper here. And then we're also going to build cooling into this, because notice all these materials are up over 250 degrees. That is none of the buenos. So we're going to build a cooling system just the same way we do in our metal volcanoes, which is, once again, something else I want to do today. It'd be great to get our hands on some of this refined copper and refined aluminum. There it is. Gotcha. And you might be wondering if it's going to get too hot in here for some of the steel equipment, and it shouldn't ever. And the reason why is because this water is coming out at 95C. Well, when 95C water goes in here, the hottest it can get is around 250 degrees. Well, 250 degrees is near perfect for the steam turbines. A little warmer, because the most optimum would be around 225 degrees. But as long as we're only putting in 100-degree water, we don't ever have to worry about this place getting any hotter. But just in case maybe some of the materials are coming out hotter or something like that, as a fail-safe, we are going to put in a thermosensor down here. And the only thing the thermosensor is going to say is, hey, if it's hotter than, say, 260 degrees, turn on the steam turbines and redirect their coolant so that 95C is actually cooling down this room instead of continuously going to the geothermal heat pump. Now, we're going to need this to send out a green signal to turn these on, but then I'm going to need to flip it once again in the same way that we currently flip the liquid shutoff if the steam pressure in here ever gets too low. So I need a green signal for here, which is what we're going to get. And then I suppose the easiest way to get a green signal in here would be to continuously send a red signal into here without it being connected to this battery run. So it's actually going to have to be a separate input. And the reason why is because if I just took this line here, that the thermosensor will be able to flip green regardless of what the battery is doing, well, then the battery would send a false green signal to the liquid shutoff even when we want it to be red, because there's not enough steam pressure in here. And I think the best way to do this is actually just with another thermosensor. And since we're putting two of them in, why don't I make them even Steven? Something like this. I'm about to show you what I came up with the automation, and it's a little complex, so I want to give you a quick break and show you what else we've been doing. When I first started this episode and I was showing you all the bonbon trees, you may have seen a lot of the eggshells. Well, that's because we were so desperately behind on tasks. And the primary reason was because, well, all the dupes were moving very, very, very slow for quite some time. Because you may remember they all had a -10 to all stats during the zombie apocalypse. So instead of Chris Hoffler's normal overall athletics of 6, because they have a natural skill as 12, and lose 6 for an Atmos suit, they were losing 16 whenever they were in a suit. Now, I know some of you like the prospect of a dupe gem to really crank up that athletics. Then if you get a zombie apocalypse, well, they're still going to have a positive athletics. Well, you notice, our dupes do have a gem. They just only use it when they're idle. Because in my eyes, yeah, they can run on the wheel to gain their athletics, or, well, they can run over here and do a task. The key is actually just keeping them busy, because you're either losing the duplicate labor when you're training them, or I'm losing a little bit of dupe speed by having them start off doing errands. So it's sort of a zero-sum game. But there are other things we can do to make it a little bit better. Notice that most of our morale is in the 20s and almost hitting the 30s. So I think it's time that we do another run to make sure everybody has some beautiful exosuit training. Yeah, it's going to be an additional morale requirement, but their morale can cover it anyways. And then after I've assigned everybody, the highest morale requirement we have is an 18. We even have some as low as 13. And notice, for instance, in Gave Up's case, they still get the -6 for being an atmosuit, but the exosuit training gives it right back at a +6. So they don't have that penalty. Not to mention the +4 to athletics for having suit sustainability and exosuit training. Well, let's see what we can do about making that morale just a little bit higher by getting our hands on the deep fryer. And you may be thinking, well, Echo, what about the new dupes? The new dupes don't have the skill points to get the exosuit training. Well, remember, by default, no one can get out of the base. So I specifically wait until they do get some good training before they're allowed to come out of the base and do suits. Otherwise, they're either running on the wheel or doing errands in here. Sort of a win-win. And why haven't I picked up any snow yet? No pending deliveries? We can run up here. We can run over here. Oh my goodness, they must have already used all that snow. Here's a bunch more here. Let's actually see what the deal is. Just that little bit of digging has given us about 5 tons of snow, so that should keep everything on the up and up for a little while. I still don't like this design very much. I'm considering reducing the amount of the nectar trees and leaving the ones for the seals, but I'm not sure because I still need a lot more nectar. But 100 kilos per cycle of snow, that's a bit significant. Of course, maybe we could start using an ice maker. It doesn't go into details of how much it's going to produce, but it does say the build time is 30 seconds. I'm going to fire this up for a little bit just to see how it goes. It does produce a lot of heat, but our cooling loop is in place now, and I am not too worried about it. While I let that run a little bit, it's time to get into this automation. I decided on completely 2 separate systems, which is probably duplicative, but in the end, I think it comes out to be much, much cleaner. And what I mean is, well, I just put in another liquid shutoff. I don't want the battery to be able to control the liquid shutoff, and that's what would happen if I integrated both systems. This liquid shutoff here is being controlled by this Atmo sensor. It says, if the pressure in here gets too low, start sending the water back in. Then we have a battery that tells the steam turbines when to turn on, in other words, when to start using all this amazing geothermal heat and turning it into power. Alternatively, we also have a thermosensor that can do that if it ever gets too hot in here. If the temperature's above 260 degrees, also turn the steam turbines on. But if the temperature gets above 250 degrees, in other words, not quite the emergency valve of having the steam turbines run 100%, but rather, hey, we're starting to get a little high, so why don't you dump a little bit of the water back in? And that's what this one says. If it's sending a green signal, in other words, it's not too hot in here, the water just bypasses into the next liquid shutoff. So yeah, it's a few different automation systems, but I think this will just yield you the cleanest results. And now we have a completed rail system as well. The rail run is pretty short. We're using iron ore because we don't have much of anything else. And it's connected to a conveyor chute, which has a timer sensor connected via automation. This timer sensor fires once every 30 seconds. And we're doing that just so we have debris that halts on this metal tile. And that metal tile is going to stay nice and cool thanks to the nectar going around and around. So now all we have to do is tell the conveyor loader, pick up everything. The auto sweeper grabs it, puts it in the conveyor loader eventually, and then it comes down here and sits on this rail. Notice how quickly, in that case it was some granite, loses its temp down to 130, 120. How much lower? Because everything in here is kind of hot, we may have to put that timer sensor on a little bit slower. Oh, but this isn't looking bad at all. The granite's already down to 50 something degrees, And now the next one is in. Some of that granite was up at 280 degrees. So I think for now, to start off with, until we get caught up, I'm going to say 45. So now the debris is going to sit here for 45 seconds. Yeah, we have a couple of gaps in here. No big deal. And it's just because I extended it by 2 pipes worth. And now all that's left is, well, to shut this. And to shut it, I'm going to have to disconnect the whole thing from the power line. Because I need this to be a vacuum, which means I got to get rid of the steam from it. And I can use a joint plate to cover up a regular tile, but once you do that, I can't build a tile on its legs, so it's gonna have to be something like this. Give me a second, I'll show you what I mean. So we have our completed heavy watt joint plate, but I need this tile to be vacuumed out, so what I'm gonna try is putting a regular tile here, which will hopefully force the mercury up and destroy the steam. It may not do that. I may just completely ruin this lock, in which then we'll have to back up and reverse it. And nope, it just pushed the mercury over to the side. It looks like I'm gonna have to figure out a different system, either by putting a double liquid lock in to make sure that heat's not transferring in the end. And it looks like this is gonna be my solution. Right now our nectar's sort of warming up here because nothing here is plugged into power, but I'm gonna put a nice mercury liquid lock here. And after it's in place, deconstruct all these tiles, and then this will be a vacuum. And then I can put the heavy watt wire right through it. And we don't even have to worry about this little steamy guy. In fact, I could even just open up this heavy watt joint plate, and anytime we need to get in here, we could. For instance, by sweeping the stuff that I forgot to sweep. And there we go. I think this system is 100% complete. Now, in the coming episodes, I want to get to this geovent and then pop this one. We're still not quite ready with this. I have a couple of ideas though. Now I think it's time for us to get our hands on a renewable source of refined metal. I think because it's so close to this ladder, I'm gonna have to build the whole system going this way, which isn't too big of a deal. Some insulated tiles up. We will make this one of the 1 steam turbine variants. And enough room for a battery. Oh, gave up. You're trying to get stuck. Get out of there, please. Oh, Naz, you too. Usual suspects. Here's our basic setup for installing the metal volcano tamer. Step 1 is going to be vacuuming this whole thing out, so we're just going to grab a normal gas pump. Iron is fine. What's the gas pressure up here? Ooh, 3 kilos. We're going to have to use a high pressure gas vent. No big deal. It does not need to be made out of steel, though. Iron, I guess? Since when did high-pressure gas vents cost 200 kilos? I remember this not. We are going to need, where is it? Power, a large power transformer made out of, I guess, iron. That should do fine. Let me fix this up a little. Something like that. Ooh la la. And in my haste to be cute and put some nice wood panels in here, I used obsidian behind the copper volcano. I accidentally dug it out. So that's going to be a whole thing. So I modified the liquid lock just in case the molten copper comes out. It's only going to hit this tile and not the mercury, because it would do bad things to mercury and create mercury gas. And that's an element I just don't want to deal with it at this time. We're almost ready anyways, though. We've finished vacuuming this place out, so we can get rid of all this. I'm still going to need this wire for the thermo aqua tuner, and I might as well add some water in now. That way it could absorb some of this heat. I'll be back in another minute. Looking at the size of this room, it's 28 tiles, and I want 50 kilos of steam pressure in each tile, so I need to drop off 1.4 tons of water, or 1,400 kilos. Shouldn't be too bad. Let me raise the priority on this before this volcano gets upset on me. Next stage is in the aqua tuner, and all of the piping is just going to be a simple plumbing route. Of course, going through this metal tile, which is going to be responsible for the conveyor loader dropping off all this refined copper once we're all done. Looks like after analyzing it, we're going to get an average output of 328 grams of copper per second. Not shabby. I do need to fill this loop though, and what do we have here? Brine? Ew. Can I get some nectar? The closest I have nectar is way up here. I pulled the nectar line all the way down to fill the cooling loop, and I think we are ready to go here. It looks like after a couple of eruptions, we're sitting at... Ew, 10 kilos? No, 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 no. We need more water than that. Why is there mercury in here? Why is all my water over here? Let's get the mercury out. And then perhaps as I push in this water, there's 1,000 kilos sitting in here. Let's give it the old try, because I think we are finished. Ooh, that was about to be close. We are not quite finished, because I want to automate this steam turbine, because of course I do. More power is better than no power. It's a nice little copper battery connected in there. Automation connected to the steam turbine, and of course to a thermosensor. Just in case it gets a little too warm in here. My standard setup for most of these. I'm going to set the battery on our standard for all the steam turbines in the colony, and that's 9070. And I'm also going to make sure it doesn't get too hot in here, so if the temperature is above, say, 220, now let's say 200 degrees, also turn the steam turbine on. All right, now about pushing this water in. Let's start there. Then we'll build another one right here. Oh no, there's still water down here. Hold on, let me start pushing from down here. We've got about 40 kilos worth of steam pressure. I don't mind it going a little bit higher, but we still have 2 tons of water here. I have no idea where all this water came from. Yeah, we dropped off quite a bit, but it shouldn't have been that much. Okay, I went a little overboard. There's 114 kilos worth of steam pressure. Still not too much for the copper volcano, but I suppose if having too much is better than not having enough. Now all we have to do is activate the copper on the line. Oh, yes, and because we have... Oh, I boogered up. I forgot to make those out of steel. Stand by. Gotta get back in. Okay, second or maybe third time's the charm. This is now 100% done. Notice our timer sensor is set on 1 every 30 seconds. Of course, that's probably a little too aggressive. And we wouldn't be leaving as much heat on here on the line, so let's do that math real quick. We see we have an average output of 328.3. Well, we want that in chunks of 20 kilos because 20 kilos is how much on the line. So if we wanted to perfectly utilize, based on the lifetime of this volcano, at what rate would we want all that metal to come out? Do that math, all we do is take our 20,000 grams, i.e. 20 kilos, and divide it by that 328 grams. And we get a rate of 1 every 60 seconds. So we would just go up here and say 60 seconds. And what this means is there'll always be copper on these rails. And that way we're pulling all the heat out of them as possible, which just makes this whole system a little bit more efficient. Now I do have the thermal aqua tuner set to -5. And that's only because, well, the environment around here needs to stay nice and chilly. In fact, we can go much lower. I mean, -82? Why don't we let this aqua tuna work? Let's say -25. There we go. And now it's all done, and we have a renewable source of copper. Yay! So that means I no longer have to use iron ore in and around the colony, so I can start turning all of this into steel, which we're going to need here in the next couple of episodes. So let's start a 50 on the iron and a forever on the steel. By the way, our nectar liquid reservoir is down to -31 degrees. That's despite all the metal I've refined and the fact that we've extended it throughout the entire colony. And what do we have to show for it? Well, it's all pretty nice now. We have our relative temperature set at -16. Everything's growing as it should be, and all the animals are so very happy. One quick update I was messing around with for a little bit is trying to get the deep fryer online. Well, we switched the Mammoth Ranch by 2 so that I could have enough space, and I was like, oh, okay, it has to be in a kitchen, no big deal. A kitchen I thought was just 2 or more kitchen equipments. Well, unfortunately, that's just not the case. The kitchen requires a spice grinder, a cooking station, and a refrigerator. So I'm gonna have to do a redesign in the future. I can't believe I'm gonna put a spice grinder in. The last system I wanted to show you today was the fact that we started making little icy machines. The ice makers can now be used to create both ice and snow, which you can gather why we're trying to do the snow, to keep the bonbon trees all fertilized. Unfortunately, something's going on with my math. Every time the ice maker produces a ball of snow, it is 60 kilos. Well, when we check the database, you can see that the build time for this is 30 seconds. Wait a minute. This is how long it takes to build the building. Oh boy, that's why my math was on. Hold on. Let me see if I can catch one of these starting and then time it and see how long it actually takes to cool water into some snow. This ice maker just spit out 60 kilos worth of snow, so we just have to wait for a dupe to deliver some. Hopefully it's on an even sort of timing. And the water fills, boom, and it begins. So we can say that the cycle is, I don't know, what do we call this, 7:30? 8 o'clock? And it just finished now? So what do we call that, 10:30? I don't know. If a whole cycle is 600 seconds and a half a cycle is 300 seconds, a quarter of a cycle being 150 seconds, my guess is it's 100 seconds per recipe of water to snow. The ONI wiki is really no help, especially considering the ice maker just sort of got an update in this last patch. But if we were to estimate that yes, it takes 100 seconds for the ice maker to make 60 kilos worth of ice, that means it can create 6 batches per cycle for a total of 360 kilos. And with each tree requiring 100 kilos worth of snow, that would mean an ice maker can only support 3.6 trees. Although it does not seem like it's doing a good job of that even with 3. It could be that just that there's a backstock and how much snow that the farm tiles can hold. I'm not 100% sure. For example, this farm tile has 200 kilos worth of snow in it. I'm going to keep playing around with these and see how they do over the course of a dozen or 2 cycles. Yeah, they do produce a lot of heat, but our cooling loop is doing just a fine job of taking care of that. Well, ish. Once I figure out the exact numbers on the ice makers, I'll probably put them in our industrial area, make a whole system, dropping off everything. Which reminds me, I have to redo this system anyways, because I don't want to be on critter omelets. I want to start stacking all the eggs in one little area, especially for our spigot seals. Because as it stands, the only time we're getting tallow is when one of these little buddies die. If we just take their eggs and make omelets out of them, we're not getting any of this delicious tallow. And I want tallow because I want squash fries. It was a little bit of a hodgepodge episode. We finished up this system here, although something weird is going on. Every few cycles I'm getting a small pile of sand here and a couple of things of igneous rock. My guess is it has something to do with some of this being too hot, which probably means I need to rotate this rail around a little bit more. There we go. That's much better. And now we're actually drawing a lot more heat out of all these materials, and so this metal tile is not going to have to work as hard. Brilliant. Why didn't I think of that the first time? We also tamed this copper volcano and now have an infinite supply of refined copper and sort of cleaned up the whole place after, the great zombie apocalypse. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. So until next time, much love, happy gaming, and I'll talk to you soon.